Okay, I'm here with Sravish Sridhar, the CEO of Kinvey. Sravish, before we even begin, I was thinking that we've got a lot in common. We both married up, and we both married for love. And let's start this again. Okay. Okay, Sravish, I just wanted to start this by saying we've got something deep in common. We both married up, and we're both in Boston for love, following our Harvard wives. So with that out of the way, I will say that the greatest compliment, one of the reasons I knew that I wanted to invest in you, is anybody who can get such a gorgeous and accomplished wife as you had obviously has the golden touch of telling a story, which is integral to every CEO around.
Indeed.
Yeah. So give us a little quick background.
So I moved to Boston, like you mentioned, following my wife, girlfriend, fiance at the time. And Kinvey is my second startup. Straight out of school, I went to school at the University of Texas at Austin. And I was part of the founding team at a company called United Devices, where we built grid computing software. And we had an exit in 2007. I was there for a year. And after that, I was thinking about what I wanted to do. And I met this lovely young woman. She swept me off my feet. And I was living in Europe at the time. And she said, I'm moving to Boston. And that's how I ended up here. And we got married. I was a kept man. Proud kept man for a year.
That's my story too, except for in my case, I was married by the wife saying, we're going to Boston.
And I followed her.
Yeah.
And so I give her a lot of credit. I think the reason I started Kinvey in Boston was I decided at some point that I needed to figure out what's next. I did a lot of hard work, came up with a thesis for the company, and started Kinvey, and here we are.
Well, before we get into the idea of what Kinvey is, and I promise we'll get there, one of the things that amazes me about you is your ability to see the future a bit. And let's go back in the past. You're a Techstars graduate. Mm-hmm. I am pretty sure that the reason you got into Techstars is because of a little weird and interesting thing. Tell us about SETI.
So when I was in school in the late 90s, there was a project coming out of the University of California at Berkeley called SETI at Home. And the idea was to build a screensaver that people could put on their PCs. And when the PC was idle, the screensaver would come up and connect to a server and get a small piece of work and complete the work and send the answers back. And the vision was if we could build a large virtual supercomputer using all the PCs on the planet, we could do large-scale computation without investing in servers. It became hugely successful. I was part of the team that built that out. And there was a set of entrepreneurs that wanted to take that idea and convert that into a large enterprise company. And I was part of the founding team there. And I built software that 3.5 million people used, put it on their PCs. And at one point...
That's good for a start?
We had the largest supercomputer. And so when I applied for Techstars, I'd mentioned that. And Reed Sturtevant, who is one of the managing directors here at Techstars Boston.
And geeky to the bone.
Indeed, geeky to the bone. Had used my software and knew it well. And so I think that played a huge role in him taking our application seriously and giving us a shot at Techstars.
Well, Reed, being a hacker and wanting to understand a project by actually going in and doing it, I know that he wanted to understand about cryptocurrency, so he started mining Dogecoin.
Yeah.
So now we'll have to figure out how to get all that processing power that's currently doing the processing for Bitcoin and use that to cure cancer.
Yeah, indeed. Short side story. A couple of years ago, we had a huge spike in usage on the Kinvey platform. And we reached out to the developer who was using us for their app, just to inquire what they were doing. And they said they were Bitcoin mining on Kinvey. So that has happened on our platform.
Well, hopefully you get paid by the cycle.
It was a huge spike. Yeah.
Let's go a little bit. Tell us about Kinvey, back-ended as a service. What do you do?
Yeah, so the thesis was, I saw more and more people building applications for mobile, tablet, etc. And I asked the question, what are the patterns in these apps? And when I saw the way people were building these apps, what I realized was they were building the front-end experience again and again and again, but they're also building the entire back-end, data sources, databases, identity services, engagement features, etc. And that costs a lot of money. And when I looked at the state-of-the-art in cloud service providers, they were only providing you the infrastructure. You still had to have a full-fledged back-end team to build out all the back-ends and the APIs and so on. So I said, what if I could provide that whole stack as a service? Then we could be the platform that connect to the world's people, data, and devices to enable what's next. And that felt like a massive opportunity. I got really excited. I investigated the idea with a bunch of developers. They liked it. And so we started the company. And during that journey, I decided that I needed to call what we did something. I needed to create a category. And actually, I took a page off of Dharmesh Shah's book when he coined the term inbound marketing to describe what HubSpot did. So there's a piece of paper here at the office where I wrote a bunch of options, and I put it in front of my VP of Engineering's desk and asked him what his favorite was. And he said back into the service was his favorite, and I agreed. And that's how we came up with the name.
Though unfortunately it is now pronounced Bass opposed to the original Badass.
Yeah, but there was a joke that happened at the Techstars demo day where everybody said you put the Bass in Badass. So we actually had that as in our slide deck, and that went very well. I used to tell a lot of back-end jokes when I got in front of audiences, but I can't do that anymore. I have to be a little bit more circumspect because of our current customer list.
Right. Well, let's get to that. When the original phone apps were coming out, they were, following latest capabilities, where that could have been GPS, and now it's going to wallet or NFCs or whatever like that. But most phone apps were all going to the consumer.
Yep.
The Snapchats of yesteryear.
Yep.
What's going on with enterprise?
Yeah, I've seen a huge shift in the enterprise market. What I've seen is in the last 3 years, enterprises have gone from building apps that were primarily driven by marketing departments just to stay competitive, just to put something out there so that they could be seen as having a mobile product, to now enterprises asking the question, how can I fundamentally change a business process to improve efficiencies? Or how do I create new ways to cut costs or create revenue for the business? So for example, we have clients like Schneider Electric, that's a global energy company, that are rolling out 200 plus apps over the next 2 years.
Are these apps, for example, like for the guy delivering to click on his pad, so it's like the UPS driver type of app?
So for example, it could be people that are in the field managing energy equipment. It could be people that are contractors for you as a consumer when you have a problem and you want an electrician or somebody to come to your home and fix things. But it could also be B2C applications where it's a new way for you to buy electrical appliances. It could also be people managing data centers where you have HVAC equipment or energy sensors, and you want to be able to gather information about it, troubleshoot it, get alerts when something goes wrong. There's a whole set of use cases across the board, in even one company like Schneider.
So let's just say you're a big company. I remember back on my day, whenever we would line up a new large custodian bank, it was a huge pain.
Yep.
Everything was individualized to them because there wasn't a shared platform.
Yep.
And we effectively were making APIs to a new center.
That's right.
Your original product, you were connecting to Amazon Cloud or whatever it was. Yep. Those links are all still in place.
Yes.
But when you get a big corporate client, what's involved?
Yeah, that's a great question. So fragmentation exists in the back end many times over, like you mentioned. And fragmentation can be at 3 levels. One, fragmentation can be at the infrastructure level, where enterprises are supporting different data centers, different clouds, etc., as they procure things. Fragmentation could be at the identity level. You're using different mechanisms to log in your users. You're using Active Directory. You're using single sign-on, etc. And fragmentation could be at the data level, where you have all these databases, APIs, cloud services, legacy internal systems. And so if you're building these mobile experiences, how do you decouple all that fragmentation from the mobile experience? Because ultimately, the mobile experience is a very concise way for somebody to perform a function. And the mobile experience shouldn't map the fragmentation. And so what we've enabled via the backend service platform is the ability, A, to run on any cloud infrastructure, B, to connect to any identity service, and C, to connect to any data service, so that the mobile developer can define the experience they want and then pick and choose which systems they connect into to deliver that experience.
So what happens for your company when something new comes out, like a new Apple Watch?
Yep.
What types of, does that throw you into a 2-month tizzy and trying to figure out new connections?
That's a great question. So one of the main reasons enterprises work with us is because it's too hard for them to keep up with the pace of mobile. Mobile is changing so fast in terms of operating system versions changing, new devices coming out, new SDKs coming out to build applications. They want a vendor who gives them the SLA that they will keep up with the pace of mobile. They want to outsource that pain to somebody. So to answer your question, we're very good partners with Apple, with Google, with Windows, etc. And yeah, it's on us to keep up with the change of operating systems, devices, etc. And so our SLA is when these things come out and are available to the public, we support them on our platform immediately.
Platform as a service, backend as a service, infrastructure as a service. Explain.
I always think about this as across two vectors. One is, what is the use case, the primary use case for each one of them? And second is, if you just look at it from a dollars and cents standpoint, what costs are they looking to either offset or cut for you as a business? Infrastructure service is typically providing you network compute and storage out of the box. So it's essentially a server with storage and networking built in. And if you look at your P&L,
an example of that would be
Amazon or Google or Azure. And if you look at your P&L, what they're looking to take out from you is your capital expense to go buy servers and storage, etc., and make it an operating expense where you could slide a credit card and you get compute on demand. Platform as a service, the use case is they're giving you a runtime environment for you to run your backend code on. So you still have to write the database, you still have to create the schemas, you still have to create your API layer, your security layer. But once you've done all that, you can provision it at the platform as a service layer, and they scale it for you automatically and they run it for you automatically. If you go to your P&L, what they're taking out from you are the people that would be the folks that would manage this and scale it. So it's your system administrators, or now they're called your DevOps engineers. They're making that part of your P&L shrink. Backend as a service is saying you're building apps, and all the developer cares about is to consume data services, identity services, a set of engagement capabilities, and the ability to write and run custom business logic. They're essentially building the app. And so we provide the entire platform for all the backend capabilities so that you don't have to write it. So if you look at your P&L, we're saying you don't need a full-fledged backend team to figure out all this fragmentation. You perhaps need one or two people. You just need the front-end team to build the apps. So those are how the three segments split out. Server costs, sysadmin costs, backend team costs.
So just as a corporation doesn't need to reinvent billing and healthcare, you can go to Zendesk or Zenefits or whatever the outsourced fund is. You provide that same role into anything mobile.
Yeah, exactly. And the key is anything mobile, right? So when we talk to enterprises, they think about everything as a backend problem. How do I connect into a system? But what they leave out is there's an equal, if not more amount of work to then connect that to iOS and to Android and to JavaScript.
And maintaining on every 4.41,
and that's a pain.
4.42.
That's a huge pain. For example, the best apps work offline. If you take a feature like offline capabilities, that works very differently on iOS, Android, Windows, JavaScript, etc. And so as an enterprise, even if I solve the backend problem, I still need a full-fledged team to take each one of those front-end features and maintain them on an ongoing basis. So what backend as a service is taking data, identity, engagement, and business logic and tying it down to mobile and providing that full end-to-end capability for
And
it.
across, I will have to go out there and yell at our friends at Google. I use Hangout on a couple of laptops and a tablet and a phone, and it's inconsistent.
Yes.
It just and the idea is hopefully that you are able to master these problems for any one of your clients.
Exactly right.
Now you must have just operationally every time a new function comes out, that must be big QA time.
There is, and that's the advantage we're having a large developer community. One of the things we've done is we do have a beta community of developers that are very interested in improving the product. And so when we launch new features, they consume it, they use us, they give us feedback before we push it out to everybody else. And so we're able to do QA internally, but also leverage passionate developers in our community that are willing to help us with QA as well.
Okay, so by the way, my son has got a company up in Canada which is developing a wearable technology to monitor shape and motion on back pain and things like that on his phone. So how would he get in touch with you guys at Kinvey?
It's really simple. Everything we provide at Kinvey is always available as a service. It's a cloud-native service, so he would just go to kinvey.com, create an account, follow the instructions on how to use us, and we become his back end. So he just has to focus on the wearable and the app, and everything else is taken care of out of the box.
Just figure out what that data means.
That's right. The data, but also identity. Because you as a user, you might want to use Facebook to log in. You might want to create a custom identity for his service. You may want to use LinkedIn. Every new app has to give the user choice on which service they want to use to even log in. And so does he want to figure out how to log into every system, or he could just use us? And we've also figured out the identity capabilities. And the same thing for push notifications and SMS and analytics and an entire app. Every startup that is building an app is raising $1 million, $2 million, $3 million because there's a lot of work to get done to be a full-fledged application. And what we're saying is you shouldn't have to do 50% of the work. Take all the back-end stuff and get it as a service. Save your money for marketing because ultimately you have to get traction. Don't save your money on building the back end.
Thank you so much, Sravish.
Thanks, Ty.